So, today we are diving into a really critical choice facing Britain, one that's laid out in a policy report called Defend or Depend. And it gets right to the heart of a huge battle for the country's national security and its tech industry. Should the UK be building and protecting its own defense capabilities, or is it becoming dangerously reliant on others?
And this quote from the report, wow, it just perfectly captures the whole problem, doesn't it? It paints this picture of a story that's happened over and over again in Britain. Amazing, groundbreaking ideas, brilliant companies, all developed at home, only to be sold off to foreign owners, taking sovereign control right along with them.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's just make sure we're all on the same page with the key idea here: defense sovereignty. This isn't just about having an army or a navy. It's about having the independent power, the industrial and technological muscle to equip and support that military without ever needing to ask another country for permission.
Right, so with that definition locked in, let's look at the first major issue the report really digs into. This clear and frankly worrying pattern where Britain's best and brightest tech just seems to be constantly for sale. A classic example they point to is ARM Holdings. The analysis literally calls it a technological crown jewel. When it was sold back in 2016, Britain basically handed over its sovereign power in the absolutely critical field of microchip design. I mean, that's huge.
And don't for a second think this is ancient history. The report flags the recent sale of Oxford Ionics, a major leader in the revolutionary world of quantum computing. This shows the exact same pattern is happening right now, with the very technologies that are going to define our future.
And it's not just the new flashy tech either. Take the acquisition of Cobham, a historic, foundational company in the UK's defense and aerospace sector. It shows that even the big, established firms are vulnerable, really cementing this trend.
You know, the report uses this really powerful metaphor to describe what's going on. It calls the UK an IP farm. The idea is that the UK is amazing at planting the seeds, coming up with brilliant inventions, but when it's time to actually harvest and grow those ideas into global businesses, someone else swoops in and reaps all the rewards.
So, this pattern isn't just an economic headache. Not at all. Let's look at how the report connects all of this to what it calls a clear and present risk to the nation's security.
Which of course brings us to the big question: so what? What's the real danger here? What actually happens when the technology that powers your national defense isn't really yours to control anymore?
Well, the report paints a pretty chilling picture. I mean, just imagine this. HMS Queen Elizabeth, the pride of the Royal Navy, having its entire navigation system shut down remotely just on the whim of another country. It sounds like a movie plot, but it highlights the very real risk.
And beyond the direct military threat, there is a massive economic stake here. Just look at this number. We're talking about nearly 500,000 jobs in the UK supported by the defense industry. So when one of these companies gets sold, it's not some abstract loss of tech. It's a direct threat to people's livelihoods across the country.
So, you have to ask, why is this happening? Well, the report points a finger directly at a policy gap. See, in the US, you have these really robust systems that act like shields to protect their crown jewels. The UK has its own law, but the report argues it's been enforced so hesitantly that it's basically left the door wide open, making British firms easy targets.
And this sovereignty gap, it becomes even more dangerous when you look at the race for the future, for the next generation of strategic technologies. The report makes it clear the UK is at serious risk of losing its edge in both quantum and AI.
And just take a look at this table from the report's data. I mean, it paints a really stark picture. In these critical areas of quantum tech, from unhackable communications to sensors that could make stealth obsolete, the analysis shows China making real operational progress, while the UK is described as lagging behind.
Now, in the world of artificial intelligence, the report flags a different, but just as serious, kind of dependency. It points to this growing over-reliance on a few giant US firms for critical data infrastructure. And that creates a double whammy of a risk. A cybersecurity risk, sure, but also a sovereignty risk, putting you at the mercy of foreign tech moguls.
Okay, so it all sounds pretty grim, I know. But the report isn't just about sounding the alarm. It actually proposes solutions. It lays out a clear plan to fight back and start rebuilding the UK's sovereign capability.
At the very heart of the plan is this idea called a Sovereign Capability Audit. It's basically a smart way of making deliberate choices. First, you figure out what tech the UK absolutely must own and control, no questions asked. Second, what can we collaborate on with our trusted allies? And third, what can we simply access or buy from the global market without putting ourselves at risk?
And based on that audit, the authors lay out some really actionable policy changes. Things like reforming how the government buys things, so it prioritizes UK resilience, not just the cheapest price tag. They say, let's use public funds to actually invest in our homegrown companies. Let's make it easier for smaller, innovative firms to get a piece of the pie. And crucially, let's sharpen the teeth of that National Security Act to explicitly protect our crown jewels.
And really, at the end of the day, it all comes back to this one fundamental point, which is just driven home perfectly by this quote from NATO's chief. This isn't just about business plans or profit margins. A nation's ability to actually build and maintain its own stuff is the bedrock of its entire security.
And so that leaves us right back where we started, with the report's central, challenging question. It frames this whole situation not as some vague policy debate, but as a very stark choice for the United Kingdom. Are you going to actively defend your own technological and industrial future, or are you going to depend on the choices and the goodwill of others?